Hi, welcome to Hey, Look at My Thing with Aaron Irons, Keegan Reynolds, and Rachel Bennett. On this podcast, we share things that we're enthusiastic about with our friends, and this week, we're sharing Donut County.
What have you been watching where Get Stuck In has jumped into your head?
Oh Jesus, there's so many British things.
I know.
It's like it is a thing. Actually, I don't know if they use it in Australian things too. I think that's kind of in both
Probably.
places. Because I listened to this Classic WoW podcast before Classic WoW came out because, I'm like that. And this Australian guy would interview big names in the MMO industry, and I think he used that term quite often.
Yeah, I remember it from like books, a lot of uh military fiction that was by British people. Um um have either of you watched Life on Mars, the BBC one?
No.
No.
Normally, my hit rate is a little bit better with things from the BBC, because I was one of those teenage girls who secretly wanted to be British.
So I might put it on there. I watched the entire British one. They had an American version that came out that wasn't nearly as good because, but basically this modern detective was in some sort of accident, and he wakes up and he's in the 70s. He's still a detective, it's still everything else, but it's the 70s, and it's half of it is police procedural, and then half of it is him trying to figure out am I in a coma? Am I dead? Am I insane? So it's pretty interesting. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll put that on the list at some point because I did watch that entire series and it was really good. But anyway, I guess we should probably start.
Yeah. So after a bit of finagling some technology, I think we are all at the point where we possess in some form a playable copy of the hit game Donut County.
Yep. Everybody was talking about it in what year?
I mean 2018. It wasn't. That's when it came out. It not super long ago. So it was August of 2018, and it got kind of a decent amount of initial hype, and I think is not. By decent amount, I mean it's still definitely an indie game, and stayed pretty small. Which leads me to what do you know about Donut County? Do you know anything about Donut County?
So I saw the brief introduction at least, and there was a raccoon on a toilet, and
Yes.
It kind of looks like Untitled Goose Game in terms of look and feel.
Yeah, it's got that flat sort of bright colored design. Yeah.
Uh-huh. But as far as mechanics and story, if there is any of that at all, I do not have any concept of what I'm jumping into.
Yeah, I just saw the opening thing, which was a girl and a fox, I think, looking down a hole and throwing a donut into it. That was the only thing that I have seen about it. I'm guessing just from the title, it's going to be lighter. What should we expect about this thing?
Okay, so I don't know, and Aaron, this is probably more likely for you. But do either of you have any experience with the game Katamari Damacy?
I have not played it, but I have seen it. I know the concept.
Okay, so like Katamari Damacy is like this very cute game that is like very intentional about its design and its sound design, and like does a lot of interesting things very, very well. And the point of Katamari Damacy is that you are like collecting the biggest ball of garbage you can, basically. Like
I've seen videos of this.
Yeah, there's a little more to it than that, but sort of the like standout feature of Katamari Damacy is this like big rolling ball of garbage that is collecting all of the other garbage. Donut County is kind of like Katamari Damacy in reverse. You are playing as, I guess the main characters are a girl and her friend Raccoon. The raccoon is an asshole, and he has the ability to open up a big hole and swallow things up into this hole. And the game was described by its creator, Ben Esposito, who is sort of a thing if you have a thing about indie games. Like he was behind What Remains, or he was a part of the team, not behind. This is his first like individual project, the one that he's been like the lead and like main person on. But he was a part of What Remains of Edith Finch, which is a really big, or became a really big indie game, and was sort of a pioneer in the like walking simulator genre of games. He was a part of the team on Tattletale, which is like an indie horror game about getting a Furby for Christmas. The kiddo is like super into it. She has like little stuffed Tattletales and things like that, because she is a big, scary, spooky kid. I don't know. she likes spooky stuff. There was sort of an abomination called the Sonic Dreams Collection that you may have seen if you follow Polygon. I think at one point Griffin McElroy did a thing where they played through part of the Sonic Dreams Collection, which is sort of like it's sort of like a non-Euclidean horror take on Sonic. So like a lot of the things that he does or was a part of had this like much darker tone to it. And he described Donut County as being about swallowing Los Angeles and realizing you're an asshole.
Okay. All right.
So that's sort of like, I mean, that's kind of the like main overview for the game. As far as like what to expect, it's important to note, just kind of going into it, that like Keegan, I know you're playing this on a computer. When I initially played it, I played it on a computer. Aaron and I are both playing through this time on our Switch, and then it's also available as a phone app for iOS. So like as far as mechanics go, it's the kind of thing where mechanically you can play it on a Switch and you can play it on a phone. So the mechanics of it are deceptively simple is how I would describe it. And I think are a really joy-inducing part of the game. Also, there is a lot of like, it is definitely humorous, Keegan. You got that right. Like the tone is pretty light, despite the fact that it's about the fact that you're realizing that you're a bad person throughout the game. The tone is pretty light. It doesn't like hit you over the head with that. I want to kind of come to it after. Normally it's a before thing, but I want to kind of come to after how the game evolved, because I think the story of that is pretty interesting. But we'll save that for after we play, because I don't want to spoil too much about it.
Okay, sounds good.
Right. I'm ready to jump into it then. I think we've got a good background.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super hyped to jump in. I'll see you guys on the other side.
Hey guys, still no advertisers, but don't worry, I've got a suggestion about where you can give your money. This week, Donut County is focused on a raccoon, and in the spirit of that, there's this really great organization called Wild Thunder. They're an animal rescue and sanctuary for wildlife. Super great organization. They always need things. They have a good website and are run by good people. Or if you're looking for somewhere else, I'm personally a huge fan of the Cedar Bend Humane Society, where I got the big dumb dog who is currently curled up next to me as I record this message, giving a big sigh like his life is really hard. It's not. He's the world's most spoiled dog. If there's somewhere local in your area that you are particularly attached to, I know there's a ton of small rescues all across the world that are doing incredible work. So think about this week, and if you can maybe skip a coffee and send $5 extra their way, because I know that these organizations run on money and also time, and any of that you have to give makes a huge difference. All right, I love you all. We'll talk to you next time.
Hello, Rachel.
Sup? I spent a little extra time because I was defeating the Coco level, and I just enjoyed this game.
I enjoy it too. We should get
Yeah, let's do the fucking thing. So I'm not gonna do a summary, but I do want to know where everyone got. I was at Coco. I would assume I got the furthest, but that might not be true.
I was where the chickens were.
Okay, so that was still
one level past Coco.
I think
one
Coco's
level.
the crocodile.
Yeah, Coco's the crocodile.
Yeah, I was level past that one.
Okay, awesome.
I got to the bees.
Oh man, the bees are a tough one. It's good.
I got stuck on the bunny area for just a little bit. Like
Yeah, me too. Like when trying to get the one bunny out.
Yeah, like I was just convinced that there was something I wasn't doing right. So I kept like restarting it and retrying different things, and then I was like, well, duh, this is how this works.
Yeah, you gotta, the obvious thing. Tell me about this game. Like, what did we see? What's happened so far?
So right. Yeah, go, Aaron, you go first.
Your description of Katamari Damacy is just absolutely appropriate. Like that is the first thing that comes to mind, and it is exactly that. It's a totally different flavor and take on it, but it's taking that concept and just rolling with it in a different way.
Rolling with it.
Yeah.
Trash ball. Okay.
I love that it does what it does so simply and straightforward, and that it just says, this is the game I'm going to make, and this is how I'm going to present it, and take it as it is. It's got like a little bit of a story that's kind of fun and goes like back and forth. But the mechanics are just so intuitive and easy to get. Like it's a great game for anybody who has no experience with gaming.
Yeah, it's like you could just start playing, and as it goes along, it teaches you kind of like the like maybe small tips and things that you need to know, just kind of very organically. I really enjoyed the music, the kind of I don't know, surfer feel to it. It was real fun. I think if I was going to play it, I don't know. I think I would play it and do something else, like listen to a podcast or be watching a TV show. I don't know if it captured my like entire attention.
Right.
But I liked it. I enjoyed it. I could see myself playing through it and like going back through and trying to see if there were some interesting things I could have done. Like I know I forgot to blow up the car. I should have blown up the car. I blew up the trailer, but I blew up the car. Did we explain what we had played there?
Yeah. So okay, let's take a second to talk about what the game is, because we
Yeah.
So the game is. There is a hole in the ground, and the character that you play as is essentially sending holes around the county and just swallowing everything up. The premise is this hole starts off really small, but the more things you put in the hole, the bigger the hole gets. And eventually, so it starts off, you're like swallowing bricks and blades of grass and then eggs and that sort of thing. And after not very much time, you're swallowing like lamp posts and cars and trailers with people in them. Like it just gets kind of out of control.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mentioned that there's some kind of like stuff that I think is adds a little bit to this game.
Some
So
background info.
yeah, so we talked about the game being about like swallowing Los Angeles and realizing you're an asshole, right? But like when Ben Esposito made the game, like when he first sort of like debuted it, he debuted it at this like indie games festival, and people were really about it. And it was very focused on like Hopi Native American culture. And he had sort of like built that in as a part of the game, that there were a bunch of these like artifacts, and he built it as like being about their sort of like folklore. And he got some pushback. Specifically, there was this like there was this indigenous activist and sort of educator, and she called him out for not actually knowing anything about Hopi culture or folklore, and using those descriptors in a kind of performative way, saying like there were like a bunch of like teepees in the game, and she was like, well, this isn't really a part of that culture at all. And he was kind of using the artifacts as like a set dressing without having, first of all, any real knowledge of what the hell he was doing, and second of all, like any kind of connection or understanding to that culture. And so he got this feedback. She was like very explicitly sort of like added him on this, like, hey, you need to pay attention to this particular take because the thing that you're doing is problematic. And it was. So he got this feedback and then was like, I'm going to prove her wrong. Which is like not a healthy response to that at all.
No.
Really. So he went about it in a way that is like, that has integrity. He like spent a lot of time and tried to delve in and tried to do a lot of research and was like interviewing people, and eventually realized like, you know what, I just don't fucking know anything about this. Like because of the way that people who are oppressed are represented, there's not a lot of information. And there's not a lot of information that you can get outside of kind of like an oral tradition or knowing very specific people in very specific fields. Like, it is hard to gather authoritative information on this. And so he dropped the whole thing and instead reflavored it because he had some raccoons outside his apartment who were real assholes. And like, that's legitimately how you ended up with kind of the game that you have. So it still has like American Southwest is still like very present in this and is almost like a character in it. But it like lost the thing. So that story of like, it's about realizing that you are the asshole is also like the story of him making this game, which I really like. Through making the game, he realized he was the asshole, and he was like, wow, more people should realize that they're actually the asshole, and then made the story of the game about realizing you're actually the asshole. And it adds up to a really kind of delightful time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it kind of sets two people apart. There's the person who like thinks they're right and goes head on into something, and he's kind of really like walks the line of both of those people and ended up, at least in the end, coming to the conclusion of like, I need to rethink myself, which not everybody has the capacity to do.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
and like
he saw it initially, it seems like a puzzle he needed to solve, which, as a game designer of a puzzly type game, which is kind of how you would expect somebody like that to approach a problem. It's like, okay, there's a problem with the game. I need to do research, and then I need to solve that problem. And saying, instead of realizing that the problem was his point of view, that's an interesting, like, kind of metamorphosis he finally got to.
Yeah. So in interviews, when the game finally came out and it's like finished version, he like described his initial response as embarrassing. Like, that is a direct quote. He was like, wow, this is a thing that I did, and boy, howdy, is it not good. And then kind of built the whole like conversations with BK with the idea of like trying to get people to empathize in a way that was like self-reflective, ideally. So making it obvious that BK is in fact an asshole, but also not so obvious, not so like overblown where you're like, oh, this is unrealistic, or like it's easy to hate him, right? Because you don't really hate BK, even though it's clear that he's kind of a dick. Yeah. Like, so that was like one of his goals, was he had this moment where I think that's a good word for it, right? He had this like metamorphosis, Keegan. And then he was trying to like sort of give a very light touch kind of guide for other people who maybe needed to take that same journey, which I think is a fascinating thing to do in a game about a hole and donuts.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I found the game, like the music and the gameplay, I found it very soothing. And the story was, it was kooky, and all the characters were, except for one, were all, I don't know, they were very stylized, mostly animals, it seemed.
Yeah, Mira, I think, is the only human who shows up.
Okay. And so, like, I wonder if that was at least a little bit on purpose, because if you see a human getting sucked into a hole, like, that kind of takes you away from that light, soothing thing, and it feels a little bit more like murder.
Right. Yeah, it's not as good.
Yeah.
I think it was also a little bit about moving away from like that original game that he released, where there were a lot more like humans in it. And he definitely wanted to, once he realized like, whoops, he definitely wanted to like move in a very different direction. And so I think that was part of it as well.
Yeah. I find, so as the game goes, it is very simple and very basic. And I would say on average, I tend to like games that have a little more depth. Mm-hmm. That said, the presentation and polish is so that it is a very enjoyable experience. And I'm not sure of the length of the game, but based off of like, since it's kind of going back to the past, and you just have to get to level 10 to get the copter, which he probably gets not too long after that. I imagine there's not a ton more before I get to the point where we're caught up to that point where they are in the present. Just because you know where your XP bar is, I wonder, I don't know, but he might have to, acquire some money and funds to buy it. So there's probably like some money acquisition that goes into it, but it feels like I won't be too long before I'm done with the game. And actually that bite-sized experience feels good to me.
Yeah.
Just because it's so basic and approachable that if you have it too long, like there's not enough depth for you to play this for 10, 20 hours.
Yeah. So it is definitely a short experience. I think I probably spent, oh man, it's hard for me to say. I know that I did play through the game in an afternoon. So like it doesn't go on for super long. It looks like most people's average, according to howlongtobeat.com, a favorite website of mine, most people's average was in the like 2-hour mark, right around there.
Okay.
Right.
And like a 2-hour game is a very short game compared to like, I mean, if you're the type of person who plays WoW consistently, that game is effectively endless, right? There like is not a time where you're like, I finished it. It's done. That's
and I'm not proud of and will not say out loud my playtime on that game.
Maybe off the air. That's one of those like Patreon exclusives, right? We don't have a Patreon.
Yet.
I have a very measurable number that I could type up right now that's classic WoW, but that is only 1/10 of my WoW experience, maybe, in total. So, oh god, the order of magnitude just makes me hurt inside.
Don't think about it. You had fun the whole time. It was worth it.
Yeah.
The whole time? I'm pretty sure there was times when he did not have fun.
Like
but anyway,
70%.
Yeah.
Rachel, you're the only one of us who played it on both the Switch and
Yeah.
desktop. Are there differences?
So there is a little bit. I was surprised I guess not surprised. So it made perfect sense to me when I learned that it was on Switch, because it's very much sort of like, it makes sense to me as like a mobile game or like a platform game, right? There aren't like controls that are intense. It's not like you need a bunch of hotkeys or anything. You know, it's light, very definitely. I like the Switch controls for the most part. One of the things that I was really delighted by that you don't get on the desktop experience, so Keegan, you wouldn't have this, is so when you're having the text conversations between like Mira and BK, or later Mira and the alligator. Coco, that's the one. When you're having those text conversations, the Switch vibrates when the message comes in. And I was like, I was so delighted by that, because it's just like a very, very small, I mean, it's such a little thing, right? Like that's nothing. But it added like just one little extra level that I was really excited about, that added a little bit of depth that I didn't necessarily have in my desktop PC playthrough. I will say that I could see myself getting like fatigued, I guess, playing it on Switch a little bit faster than I did playing it on my PC. Like I said, it's like a 2-hour game. And maybe it's just like my own personal setup and the fact that like I didn't move from my podcast recording zone, aka my dining room, to like my comfy couch where I'll sit and play Animal Crossing for 6 hours. But like, I could see myself, just because of like the way that the controls kind of handle, getting burnt out on it a little faster. And I would absolutely never use the touch. Like, Aaron, did you use touch to like drag the hole around?
No, I only used it for the text message scenes to spam the little honky honk button.
The honky honk button is very important and good. It's so good. I don't know why it's there, but it makes me so happy.
I tested that button after every single like message just to see if anything would change.
Gotta do it.
Oh, yeah. I used my laptop, which is fairly low quality, and just with the trackpad, and it still worked fine. Like I didn't even have a mouse, and it was still fine.
Yeah, there's not a lot of like deep mechanic happening, so the controls of it can be pretty simple. Did you guys take the time to read through the Trashpedia entries?
Once or twice.
Okay,
just a little. I dipped my toe in, but yeah, it was one of those things where it's like, I'm a gamer that likes statistics and the math, and like if this gives me strength but loses agility, that sort of thing, that's when things like you'll get me reading. But when things are just like lore entries, I'll do a little bit of dabbling, but unless it's like going to get me some mechanical edge, it's hard to suck me in on any game in that realm.
Right.
If I was playing it like just to play it and not to play it to like I wanted to get through it and see what it was like, I would have done that, because I am like when I play things like I played Oblivion, I would read all the books.
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
So that's where I would go with it, but I wanted to get more of the gameplay feel. I went to it twice and read through the things, and they were very cute and funny.
Yeah, I really
I enjoyed that.
I really like the Trashpedia entries. I'm especially so I saved when I first played through it. I saved a lot of the there's a level later where you're in a restaurant. And of course, since Mark works as a chef, I like saved a lot of the restaurant ones and sent them to him. Like, this definition seems right? Yes. He was not convinced that this raccoon knew anything about cooking, which I suppose makes sense. But I think they add a lot of kind of like the flavor of BK. Like, they're clearly in his voice. It sets him up a little bit more, even as this kind of like, again, not like malicious necessarily, but just kind of like irreverent and like almost
narcissistic.
Narcissistic, definitely, and almost apathetic. What the fuck ever, right? Is sort of his general vibe, which is not a way that you can go through the world and be like a responsible citizen.
Yeah.
I did notice a funny bit, like when it had the little trash thing for trash day, it said trash day was Monday and Thursday. Those are my trash days.
Oh, hey, weird.
Yep, multiple trash days.
I live in an apartment, and they have to pick up from the dumpster twice a week.
Oh, okay. I guess.
I like that right behind that it says like throw me into a dumpster, I think. I love the like have a garbage day with the little flower on it. I'm a huge fan of that.
And if you spam the A button in between like literally everything, it does like a little honking noise and makes the thing like vibrate or move. Like everything. Everything was interactive.
And that's so I really think that the like outside of the music, which is fun. I especially like the music that comes from like the radio in the Coco level. I always like try and leave the radio for last so that I can keep the music the whole time. But outside of the music, there's like the reactive sounds, like the little sound, the little like popping noise every time something falls into the hole and the hole gets bigger is like so good. And like basically every time you hit a button, there's going to be like a little sound that gives you that like ding, I did a thing feedback. That's really, really satisfying to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of satisfying, fun detail work that went into it. It's obvious that this went through several iterations where they went in and they're like, oh, it would be cool, we could put this little thing in here. Oh, it'd be cool, we could put this thing. Like things that aren't obviously integral to the gameplay or necessary for the story, but just things that they thought would just like slightly enhance. And they went through it enough times and peppered all those things in to make it feel like it's a really loved project.
Yeah. And I appreciate the fact that despite the fact that it's kind of silly and it's very light, we talked about that 2-hour playtime, that it does have that kind of like very carefully crafted feel to it. Like that time and intention was taken. And I do think for all that it's silly and all that it's light, like it is thoughtful about not just like self-reflection and empathy, but also like it definitely has some things to say about capitalism, right? Like he has that discussion with Mira where she's like, do you just think all of our houses are trash? And he's like, you guys love trash. Like, otherwise, why would you make so much of it? Right. Like there's like a recurring theme about kind of like what consumerism and capitalism does and how people operate within that. And even like when Mira's talking to Coco and she knows that BK is causing people to disappear, but also she works at the donut shop and says, quote, IDK, they treat me really well. Like that's such a call out for people who are like, well, this corporation is bad, but they're not being bad to me right now. So I guess it's okay. Right. Like there's definitely some like bigger stuff happening in a game that is like bright colors and flat design and happy poppy bubble noises and like tiny, adorable anthropomorphized critters. Like it's got a little bit more than that going on in it.
Yeah, for sure. I picked up on some of those subtle things, but you bringing them up really kind of shines light on them and makes them like even more clear that, it's got some commentary.
Yeah, I think it's also like, despite the fact that the game is pretty simple, for me personally, like the first time I played through, really what I got from the game was like, oh my gosh, these mechanics are really fun. And like the design is really fun. And like the sound design is really fun. And so now it's on this is actually my third time I'm going through it, where I'm seeing more and more of the like, okay, these are the things that are happening. And this is like what he's trying to do, because they don't take the main stage. Like it's intended to be subtle. And it does a good job of not like hammering you over the head with it, which is nice in something that's now a phone game. You don't, it's very rare that I'm like playing a game on my phone and I'm like, I want a moral sort of didactic experience. If you could just really heavy-handedly tell me that I'm a bad person, that would be ideal. Like, that's not for me. I want to match the bubbles and then make the things disappear. That's like my ideal phone game situation.
Yeah, if it was on Android, I mean, I could easily see myself downloading that and playing through it in an afternoon.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, is there a rating for Donut County?
I guess, wow, the only rating I can come up with sounds a little weird, so, like, don't make it weird, guys, but, like, how big a hole do you think Donut County gets?
Oh, well, I mean, it starts off a little bit small, but, it keeps growing and growing on you over time, and I mean, it's gonna swallow the city eventually.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
All right. So I believe that's all we got for this week. On our next episode, I, Keegan Reynolds, will be bringing to my friends here the webcomic Girl Genius.
We're excited.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening.